Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage AFFI Chair Mike McAvoy.
Well, thank you and good morning. Welcome to AFFICon 2020. 2020, just hard to believe, isn't it? But we're going to have a great time here. You know, AFFICon is the place to do business in the frozen industry and harvest business growth, as evidenced by the more than 1,400 attendees at this year's event. I'd like to begin by recognizing this morning's sponsor, Lineage Logistics. Please join me in thanking them. We are also pleased to have the following companies in our Alliance Partner Program: Simplot, Comerican, Oregon Potato Company, Mariu NutriSciences, and Lineage Logistics. We've got a lot to pack into the next hour and a half, so here's how we're going to do it. This morning's annual meeting will include a finance report, the nominations of our officers and board members. We will review AFFI's accomplishments from last year and hear from AFFI's President and CEO, Allison Boder, about the year ahead. Then we will induct 3 of our esteemed colleagues into the Frozen Food Hall of Fame. Finally, we will cap off this morning with an informative discussion on opportunities for frozen food and food service, drawing from AFFI's new research in that area. To begin our meeting, I'd like to call on AFFI Vice Chair Megan Swan to present AFFI's finance report.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everybody. Pleased to present a brief overview of the Institute's financial position as of December 31st, 2019. AFFI finished the year considerably ahead of budget with operating income of $4.7 million, unrecognized investment gains of $745,000, and operating expenses of $4.5 million, resulting in a net gain of $1 million compared to a break-even budget. On other non-operating activity for the year, including board-approved strategic initiatives in the amount of $456,000, were dedicated to AFFI's strategic goals. These funds were invested in food safety initiatives related to our best practice development and advocacy on the Hill and regulatory agencies, as well as investments in food labeling initiatives and the food safety training toolkit with Alchemy. Including these board-approved distributions, AFFI's net assets increased from $3.7 million to $4.2 million as of December 31st, 2019. At the fall Board of Directors meeting, the board approved the 2020 operating budget, which includes both revenues and expenses of $4.7 million. To break that down further, 53% of this revenue is coming from membership dues, 37% from conferences, primarily the AFFICon, and 10% from management fees and invested income. The majority of planned expenses are for the science and regulatory affairs at 31% and conference and meeting expenses at 24%. That's a brief overview of our financial report. Mike, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Megan. It is now my pleasure to present the report from the AFFI Nominating Committee. On behalf of the Nominating Committee, I wish to nominate the following individuals to serve as AFFI's officers. As Chair, Megan Swan, Vice President, McDonald's Global Business, J.R. Simplot Company. As Chair-elect, Julia Sabin, Vice President of Government Relations and Corporate Responsibility, the J.M. Smucker Company. And as past Chair, myself, Mike McAvoy, from Sargento Foods. Next, the Nominating Committee nominates the following individuals to serve on the Executive Committee along with the officers. Paul G. Genova, Vice President of Supply Chain, Bonduelle, North America. Wesley Eubanks, President and CEO, The Pick Sweet Company. Glenn Tullock, President and CEO, Lakeside Foods. And Jeff Varco, Vice President, Food Safety and Quality for Schwann's. For our new board members, Rick Drummond, Vice President, R&D and Innovation and Consumer Affairs, B&G Foods. Peter Johnston, Vice President, Quality Assurance, Cavendish Farms Corp. John MacArthur, Managing Director of North America, Right Stuff Foods, Inc. John Tentimus, President and CEO, Nature's Touch. Suvan Sharma, President and CEO, Jane Farm Fresh. Blake Smitkamp, Vice President of Sales, Wawona Frozen Foods. And Gary Crowder, President and CEO, Smith Frozen Foods. That concludes the report of the nominating committee. You've heard the nominations. May I please have a motion to approve the slate of nominees? So moved. Can I please have a second? Second, thank you, Dave. The motion is seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. And here is your 2020 AFFI Board of Directors. Congratulations, Megan, on being the new chair. You're going to do a great job. You've been a great supporter of mine, and I appreciate all you've done along the way, and we're happy to turn the reins over to you. These board members are here to represent our collective interests at AFFI. Please feel free to contact any of us to provide counsel on how we can best serve the membership at any time. I would also like to recognize 3 outgoing board members who are here with us this morning. Stan Firestone, President of Firestone Pacific Foods, David Moore, Chairman of the Board, Superior Foods, and Tom Madden, former President and CEO, Right Stuff Foods. Stan, Dave, and Tom, thank you for your many, many contributions and years of service to the Board of Directors and your leadership on behalf of the frozen food industry. It is now my pleasure to welcome back to the stage AFFI President and CEO Allison Boder to tell us about the year ahead. But before we do that, let's start by looking at what we accomplished in 2019.
The frozen food industry is booming. And through innovative programs, must-have resources, and our members, AFFI is leading the charge by flashing frozen into the future. In 2019, AFFI powered the conversation around frozen food, influencing the narrative around frozen food in the media. AFFI is the go-to resource, bringing together industry leaders around frozen food, significantly growing our social media following, all while finding compelling ways to tell your business's story. There's a story behind every frozen food. Our Frozen Food Maker video series shared your stories from farm to freezer. AFFI is working with policymakers on matters important to your business, along with the Frozen Food Pack, which supports members of Congress who support your business. We shaped policies governing food regulation and trade on a national and international level, including continuing dialogue with regulatory agencies about reasonable and achievable sodium reduction goals. We also led the industry charge to gain enforcement discretion for FDA compliance with nutrition facts labels, saving your company labor costs and wasted packaging, and reducing legal liability. We fought to allow frozen mango importers to determine their participation in a national checkoff program and achieve tariff relief for frozen food exports to secure frozen food supply chains and grow exports. AFFI's presence wasn't just felt in the halls of Congress. In 2019, we launched the Power of Frozen Retail Report, providing AFFI members with actionable business insights that provided valuable intel on the consumption, purchase drivers, and use of frozen foods. This report was covered industry-wide and was featured in 132 articles that reached 23 million readers. AFFICon continued to set the standard for business development and networking in 2019, drawing more than 1,300 attendees from over 600 companies. Our 2019 Leadership Conference brought together over 100 executive and food safety leaders from 55 companies. 2019 also saw AFFI making huge strides in advancing food safety, elevating food safety practices across the industry and supply chain through collaboration and science. We created best food safety practices for frozen food manufacturers in the prevention and control of listeria. AFFI has created a forum of collaboration to continue to advance food safety across the industry. AFFI's strategic investment in research conducted over the past few years is challenging the status quo around listeria regulatory policy and driving public health goals while minimizing business risks for your companies. AFFI staff quickly intervened when the reputation of our frozen fruit manufacturers was at stake to assure that testing measures were based on sound science. As we begin a new decade, AFFI is prepared for the opportunities and challenges ahead. We're never frozen in time. We're flashing frozen into the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage AFFI President and CEO, Allison Boder.
Good morning, everybody. Love to see so many faces here. This is wonderful. I think you guys are our biggest crowd yet for our Monday morning annual meeting, and I think maybe our Hall of Famers have something to do with that, but regardless, we'll take it. So glad to see so many folks here this morning. We are flashing frozen into the future, and certainly at least for 2020. So what I'm going to do this morning is tell you a little bit about what we're going to do in 2020. You guys are all familiar, I think by now, hopefully, with our strategic goals. These were developed by the board of directors and the membership back in late 2016 and were adopted in 2017. How many people recognize these goals? A few more hands. Excellent. Well, let me start today by, you heard in the video a lot of the work that we've been doing on food safety and advocacy and on our efforts to grow consumption. So let me share with you our goals for this year, and I'm going to start with food safety. Within food safety, our primary goal is to advance the industry's efforts and initiatives around food safety, to protect the industry. But within that broad statement, we have some very specific goals, and they are to maintain the status of not ready to eat for many frozen foods, and most importantly, to move away from the zero tolerance for listeria in ready-to-eat foods, because 0 is an impossible number, and it has created havoc in your businesses to achieve. These goals were and are considered lifelines to the frozen food industry. Well, folks, I'm pleased to tell you that the investments the industry has made over the past 3 years are finally going to pay off. You're going to see the results of that as we collect that research. We've done so much research on listeria risk assessment at Cornell and University of Georgia and also at the University of Minnesota. We are compiling that data to create the best possible package and the best possible strategy to FDA and USDA to create a new tolerance for listeria. It will be stringent, but it will be achievable. And most importantly, it will be north of 0. That is our goal. And along the way, it will provide your businesses with realistic ways to tackle listeria. All this while also achieving better public health outcomes. This is a food safety moonshot, to be honest with all of you. And we set this goal in place 3 years ago at the AFFI board. And I want to acknowledge that it wouldn't have been possible without that aspirational vision of the AFFI board, who is here today. Most of you are sitting up front. It also wouldn't have been possible, however, with the support, the financial support of the broader industry. And it certainly couldn't have been possible without the steadfast collaboration of our industry food safety experts working so closely with AFFI. We are proposing a science-based, practical, next-generation approach for listeria management. And if we're successful, this will create a groundbreaking policy shift within not only FDA and USDA, but very likely globally. It will truly have unprecedented impact for the entire food industry. And that's because of all of you in this room. I'm going to be honest with you, we still have a mountain to climb to achieve the goal that we've set. So we've got the right data, we've got the right approach, and we still have some work, however, with the agencies to convince them that it's the right approach. However, we are very confident with the data that we've produced and with the global experts that are supporting this approach and are helping us in our submission to FDA that we will reach the end game. Furthermore, regardless of FDA and USDA's endorsement of our approach, this is the right thing to do for this industry. And we will be sharing this more broadly with all of you over the course of the year. Your food safety experts are quite familiar with what we're proposing. But doing this will lower the risk of listeria in your facilities and will help create the regulatory paradigm and the business platform for your companies to grow. Now, more work is needed by this industry, including continued implementation of our best practices to control listeria. But AFFI will continue to guide you with a roadmap in 2020 so that you can be sure that you are investing your food safety dollars in the right places. Aside from reducing the physical presence of LM in your facilities, the other key component of reducing risk of an LM outbreak is making sure that the consumer understands the importance of following your on-pack cooking instructions for not ready-to-eat foods. This year, the AFFI board is also considering how we will fund a campaign to communicate the importance of following cooking instructions with vulnerable subpopulations. And you'll hear more about this through the year, during the year from our AFFI communications. Stepping away from listeria specifically, in 2020, we will also launch best practices for co-manufacturing relationships and for frozen fruit operations. The latter, for those of you who've been following what's been happening in frozen berries in particular, the latter was vital to the reputations of our growing frozen fruit industry. You see, we at AFFI remain dedicated to advancing food safety in this industry and driving clarity so that you can help grow your businesses. But we will also advocate beyond food safety in our industry in 2020. While it will probably be tough to see much legislation make it through Congress this year during an election, beyond the budget perhaps, the President still has a few months to execute policy using his executive powers, and we expect him to use that authority to negotiate trade deals with China, Japan, and possibly the UK. We also expect FDA will release its voluntary sodium guidelines. These are for companies to reduce the amount of sodium in products, and this will have an impact on many frozen foods in our industry. So it is a top priority for AFFI. Finally, we fully expect USDA and the Department of Health and Human Services to release the 2020 dietary guidelines. We'll do this on time, and we will work with both agencies to make sure that the implementation of those guidelines reflect well on frozen. Most importantly, that they create parity between fresh and frozen produce. As part of our advocacy objectives, we're building champions on Capitol Hill, members of Congress who support the frozen food industry's goals. I'd like to share an example of how this works by highlighting one of our members, P.J. McCosey, president of Del Mar Foods. Over the past 2 years, P.J. built, with some help from AFFI, a strong relationship with his member of Congress, Jimmy Panetta. And this is an important relationship because Representative Panetta sits on the House Agriculture Committee. That committee oversees a lot of issues that are important to agriculture, obviously, but also to the frozen food industry, such as federal feeding programs, the dietary guidelines, and the mango promotion program, which we talked about earlier. So PJ, because of your personal efforts to forge this relationship with Representative Panetta, I am pleased to award you with the Advocate of the Year Award on behalf of AFFI. So congratulations, PJ. PJ McCosey. I have a lovely bottle of wine for you, PJ. I'll give it to you afterwards. Thank you for your efforts. Your efforts make the industry better. Thank you. Speaking of political champions, let us not underestimate the value of our frozen food pack. The pack is an important tool that allows us to support members of Congress that support your businesses. You are all the leaders in the frozen food industry, and I ask that you contribute to the frozen food pack. These are personal contributions. They cannot be corporate dollars. So I know that it's difficult to part with money, but it is a shared responsibility in this industry. And all of you, I am looking to all of you to help support that pack. I am pleased to share that the AFFI staff, 100% have contributed to the pack this year. So thank you. Now it's your turn. So on the table there are pack forms. Please fill them out, and AFFI staff will collect them at the end. Now let me turn to our third goal, which is around growing consumption. I'm pleased to share with you that our second research project is complete. And through our Power of Frozen in Food Service research, we've developed an industry research resource that showcases opportunities to increase frozen food sales into the food service industry. We will delve deeper into that research shortly, and every AFFI member will receive a copy of the research as a benefit of membership. Finally, in the area of resources, as Megan reported earlier, we're in the second year of a 2-year dues increase. That followed 7 years of flat dues. I commit to you that every dollar you give us will continue to be spent very judiciously on the issues that matter most to this industry. We're also not relying on your dues alone. We are constantly looking at additional ways to raise revenue to keep your dues in check. One of the ways that we're doing that, for example, is exploring revenue sharing programs with food safety partners. This meeting, AFFICon, is also very important to the financial well-being of AFFI. On behalf of the staff, I'd like to say that we are all very proud of the work that we've done together with all of you, and we are looking forward to a very impactful 2020. So thank you very much. Hopefully you know by now I'm very accessible, so at any time, please feel free to call me or email me if you've got comments on where we're going. I'm always open and love to hear from you. Okay? Right now, I'll turn it back to Mike to close us out.
Thank you, Allison. As we look at 2020 and beyond, it's time to re-examine our strategic goals with the eye on the future challenges and opportunities facing the frozen food industry. To do this, we will seek your input through a survey that will be distributed later this month. Please look for that and share with us your perceptions on the state of the frozen business, opportunities, and challenges. With that, I now adjourn our business meeting and turn the podium back to Allison so that we can recognize and celebrate the legacy of 3 frozen food leaders whose vision have propelled the industry to where it is today. Thank you.
Each year, the Distinguished Order of Zerocrats nominates and votes on the newest inductees to the Frozen Food Hall of Fame. And the Distinguished Order of Zerocrats is an organization of industry members whose purpose is to promote the image and advancement of the frozen food industry. These awards have traditionally been presented at a separate dinner, but recognizing these recipients here today is a new tradition, and we're doing that because we wanted them to be recognized by a larger group of their peers, by all of you. So that's why we've shifted it to this morning. So please welcome to the stage Tom Madden, Dave Moore, and Bill Hudson. You can go sit.
I know. I'll go sit.
We made it.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'm going to share with you why Tom and Dave deserve to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and Skip Shaw, President and CEO of the National Frozen and Refrigerated Foods Association, is going to tell you about Bill. I'll start by introducing Dave. Dave Moore is co-founder of Superior Foods, which today is one of the largest companies in the frozen food industry, selling vegetables, fruit, and grains to customers domestically and internationally. David has worked in the food industry his entire career. He was inspired by his father and friends in Watsonville, California, who worked in the produce business, along with his early experience working with retail and food service markets at Titan Frozen Fruit. David is a visionary with keen analytical skills. And under his leadership, Superior Foods led new developments in package design and functionality, introducing steam-in-the-bag technology to the retail market in 2005. David's company was also the first to introduce bag-in-bag packaging. The concept grew from club stores' need to provide frozen asparagus in a package that created smaller units within a larger bag, but also protected the asparagus against breakage. David was one of the early people in the business domestically to see the need to develop foreign resources of produce, and today is an international market leader in this space. David also identified blended vegetables as a growing market, and Superior has become a leader there also. If you ask his employees, his visionary mindset is also applied to the people he hires and mentors. He draws talented people to the company and empowers them to take risks. David cares deeply about his employees and believes they are his most valuable resource. Anyone who knows David personally understands he's a man of many talents. He's not only a leader in the frozen food industry, he's also an avid traveler, an accomplished musician, a wine aficionado, and an excellent chef. Today, David is chairman of the board of Superior Foods and just stepped down from the board of directors at AFFI after many years of service. He also previously served on the Frozen Food Foundation's board of directors. From being ahead of the curve in leveraging the capabilities of global supply, to pioneering distribution and logistics optimization for food service and retail, to spearheading innovative packaging and products, David has led by foresight and actions, not only with his internal teams at Superior Foods, but also with the industry itself. I'm honored to induct David, an innovator, a willing risk taker, and someone that has a true entrepreneurial spirit, into the Frozen Food Hall of Fame. Congratulations, David. I'm going to invite them all up when we're done with all for them to say a comment or two to all of you. And now I'd like to tell you about our second inductee, Tom Madden. Tom is the epitome of a small business entrepreneur. He built his own business from the ground up, founding Right Stuff Foods in 1989 to offer quality potato product options for restaurants, food service operators, and consumers. Today, his company is one of the leading U.S. producers of potato specialty products. His story is a business inspiration for the next generation of frozen food leaders and the industry. Tom Madden began his career in 1961 with General Foods, moving on to various sales and management positions of increasing responsibility with Dole, Castle & Cook, and then Cal Avo. Throughout his early career, his sense of humor, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with if you know Tom, gained him a few nicknames in life, like President of the Optimist Club while working at Castle & Cook, and Pineapple Tom while at Dole. I'd like to know the story behind that. Tom founded Right Stuff 31 years ago with a vision for a company that could provide quality and innovative potato products like potato pancakes, potato skins, and potato appetizers. He saw an opportunity here to expand these specialty products into restaurants and food service where previously they'd been absent. Tom started Right Stuff by renting 2 small locations for processing and 2 small storage freezers in LA. The company grew, and Tom soon needed more space. So when the opportunity arose to move closer to the source of the potato in Idaho, Tom moved. Right Stuff Foods was soon up and running in Idaho on 20 acres of land, eventually employing 250 people. Right Stuff specialty products were unique and therefore in demand by larger potato processing companies like McCain and Simplot, who didn't have the unique capability to produce such products. Right Stuff was also the first to sell IQF products into the deli. After a long and successful career, Tom chose to sell Right Stuff last year to Frost-Krone Food Group. This company will continue investing in the facility and adding new snack and handheld products to the diverse portfolio of products that Tom originally started. While Tom loved all aspects of running his business, most of all, he enjoyed the people he worked with and the people in his life that helped propel him to success. Tom, you have proven that with tenacity, strategy, and hard work, a small company can remain relevant and necessary in today's growing food industry. So, congratulations, Tom. And now I'm going to let my friend Skip Shaw introduce Bill.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you. It's my honor to be here this morning to introduce my friend Bill Hudson into the Frozen Food Hall of Fame. Bill's being recognized today for his 32 years of leadership as president and CEO of the Global Cold Chain Alliance, a partnership of associations dedicated to the distribution of food commodities worldwide. Bill started with the association when it was known as the International Association of Refrigerated Warehouses. And he quickly grew the IRW membership to a position where it represented over 90% of North America's industry. As he looked to expand the organization, Bill brought in two partner associations, the International Refrigerated Transportation Association and the Controlled Environment Building Association. He was responsible for uniting these groups and creating the Global Cold Chain Alliance in 2007. When Bill started at GCCA, the association was only serving members in 12 countries. When he left, they were representing 76 countries worldwide. Under his leadership, Bill spearheaded GCCA to make a difference in the profession and in the livelihoods of deserving individuals in food, agriculture, or the cold chain industry. Through GCCA's foundation, the World Food Logistics Organization, Bill initiated partnerships with USDA, USAID, USTDA, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to address post-harvest challenges and to build the food distribution infrastructure in numerous emerging and developing countries. In recognition of his accomplishments at GCCA, a fund was created in Bill's name, the Hudson Global Development Fund, to extend grants to small businesses and startups in the agriculture and food industries in developing countries. Bill built a global association and is proud to have traveled to over 90 countries during his time at GCCA. He has served as a member of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Food and Agricultural Sector Council and was recognized as a USAID partner for food industry development, receiving the Foreign Agricultural Service Export Expansion Award. Currently, Bill is a partner in Heidrich & Struggles, an executive search firm in Washington, D.C., with focus on the trade and professional association market. This is a very fitting position since over the years, Bill and his wife Peggy have mentored dozens of young adults as they look and navigate the Washington scene looking for their careers, whether it be in the association world or in the food industry. Bill and Peggy split their time in between their homes in Arlington, Virginia and Charleston, South Carolina, enjoy spending time with their son Zach, their daughter Jocelyn, and her husband Tim, and their grandchildren Colin and Sean. Bill, it's my honor to induct you into the Frozen Food Hall of Fame. Congratulations, my friend. I'll now turn the program back over to Allison to continue with the program. Thank you.
All right. So, gentlemen, would you like to say a few words? Would you like to come up to the podium and say a few words? Which one first? Dave, why don't you come first, since you spoke first?
Good morning, guys. I'm going to make this short and say thank you to everyone in this industry, because after this many years, you're like family. Dysfunctional, but family. But the one thing I do want to say is after 10 years of being on the AFFI board, most of us look at AFFI as this entity that puts on a convention or maybe helps you out when you have a food recall. But the reality is, having spent that much time, you see how much work goes into every single day. And I want to compliment the people at AFFI, and I hope all of you can appreciate the work they do on all of our behalf. That's it. That's the whole deal. John?
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. This is quite an honor. It's very much appreciated. People talk about starting your own business, and nobody starts a business by themselves. You need the support, and the first person on my support team was my wife. So for 31 years, she thought I was crazy. I'm not sure the jury is out on that yet, but anyway, she's here today with us. Mary Ann, thank you much. And you can't move the business too far unless you have people that support you from a staff position. 2 years ago, how about 15 years ago, we added 2 members of the family, Jim Madden and my daughter Mary. Mary was primarily to have a pretty face, change the image of the company. We did. So people ask, how's Mary? They're looking at me and say, I'm here, you know, no. Anyway, in addition to my own family members, I had some terrific people that worked with me for 30 years and shared my vision, which made my job a whole lot easier. And of course, in order to complete the picture, you need customers and you need suppliers. The one customer that became the cornerstone of my business was Simplot. And lots of people over the years, and because of the size of Simplot at the time and the confidence they had in me, it allowed me to grow my business. So Simplot Group is here today. And of course, you need suppliers. And in our business, potato is very, well, it's the primary item. And we need product from growing year to growing year. And this, initially it was difficult. Today, with the practices of storage, not so difficult. But initially, and it happened, we were able to complete, keep people employed, keep the doors open for a year. So with that, I want to thank everybody for the honor here. Allison, thank you. And there's an old saying, if you like what you do for a living, you never have to go to work.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.
20 minutes, right, Alice?
No.
No, congratulations, David and Tom. Congratulations. And also, it's an honor for myself and my wife, Peggy, to be here this morning and receive this honor of the induction into the Frozen Food Hall of Fame. I'm an association guy. I came from the Architectural Hardware Association, then went through the U.S. Travel Industry Association, and I was fortunate enough a long time ago to be CEO, a privilege to be CEO of the International Association of Refrigerated Warehouses and the Global Cold Chain Alliance. Having a career in the food industry and the frozen food industry is just such an honor. We were able, as Skip said, to develop the International Association of Refrigerated Warehouses into 76 countries, 6 continents, serving members who were dedicated to the storage, handling, and distribution of frozen foods. This recognition certainly goes to the leaders of the associations and certainly to the GCCA staff that I was so grateful to work with over 32 years. So with that, I thank you for this honor, and I wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right. So one final round of applause for our 2020 inductees to the Hall of Fame. All right, we're going to move on to the next part of the program. If you guys want to exit stage left, and these are their beautiful awards. We're going to take pictures with you guys afterwards with your awards, and we'll send them to you also, so you don't have to put those in your suitcase. All right, thank you guys. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. All right, well, I think what Tom said is hitting the nail on the head, that if you like what you do, it's not work, and I love what I do. I love working for this industry. I love working for the broader food industry, and it's been a joy for me to work the last 4 years, in particular with AFFI and the AFFI staff. So I just want to do, before we move into this last part, give a shout out to the AFFI staff. Could you guys stand up for a second, if those of you who are here? Thank you. We couldn't do what we do without a great team, and we have a great team. So let me move on to our final part of this morning's meeting. We're excited to launch the next edition of our research, The Power of Frozen, and this year we've looked at food service. And this research examines the food service industry to uncover operator attitudes and perceptions and opportunities for our industry. Most importantly, it identifies food manufacturers and it identifies how food manufacturers and distributors can effectively meet operators' needs to strengthen demand for frozen food. So allow me to introduce our panel who will take us on this journey of exploring the research. First, we have Melissa Woodbury, who is Director of Customer Marketing at McCain Foods USA. Then we have Michael Castagna, who's the Vice President of Food Service Marketing for Ajinomoto Foods North America. And finally, we have Marie Moldy, who's a food service expert specializing in menu and product development, and she was the lead researcher at Data Essentials who partnered with us on this research. Welcome, Marie. And Marie's going to kick us off by giving an overview of the research before we move into a panel discussion.
Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
all yours.
Great. Well, I'm very happy to be here this morning to share results from our study, which very happily paints both a positive picture of the current state of frozen food and food service, and also a very promising outlook for us as well. So just to tee off who we talked to, 426 operators from the food service industry. I'll explain in a second what I mean by operator. And these results are hot off the press. We just fielded this study in January of this year. So that operator term means a purchasing decision maker in food service. So it could be a chef or a general manager or someone who's able to authoritatively purchase items for food service and has that decision-making power. We surveyed a 50-50 split of commercial restaurants and on-site food service locations. So commercial restaurants are those limited service operators with like counter service and lower check averages. Full service are those sit-down operators with a server, and oftentimes they have alcohol menus. And then the on-site operators are schools, like K-12 schools and colleges and universities, and then also healthcare and hospitals, B&I, and hotels. And as Allison mentioned earlier, we really tried to position this study to be a comprehensive overview of frozen food and food service. And in the future, we can look to hone in on maybe a more specific segment or maybe a more specific category. But this particular study was really meant to provide us a really good overview on what's happening within frozen food. So the usage, the reasons behind using frozen food, the different sources and the needs that frozen foods are solving for food service operators today. So teeing off with usage of frozen food and food service, and very happily, we are in a very ubiquitous category. So almost all food service operators are purchasing some type of frozen food product, food or beverage product today. So 89% of the overall industry is purchasing a frozen product, and we can see on that pink bar that actually on-site operators have a bit higher purchase incidence than restaurants. So 95% of on-site operators, those colleges and those hospitals and business and industry facilities, are purchasing frozen, and 84% of restaurants are purchasing frozen foods and beverages. All right, so the key benefits of frozen foods in the operator's perspective, what they say are key benefits are the long shelf life of frozen food and also the year-round availability of frozen food. So that consistent supply means a lot to frozen food operators, and they see that as a key benefit. And less so, operators are turning to the frozen food category for innovative products. So if you look at the very bottom of the chart, innovative products are what's not seen as a benefit of frozen today. And we'll talk in our panel about how, we've done tons of innovation as an industry, so we need to find a way to communicate to food service operators the innovation that we're already doing and that we can be turned to as a source for innovation, and we can help food service operators stay on trend. Just one way to do that is perhaps leveraging trending ingredients and flavors within food service and restaurants today. So we know that increasingly ethnic food is American food. So this is a chart of the fastest growing ingredients and flavors at restaurants. So if we have a value added, perhaps already seasoned frozen product, we might think of including an ingredient like a gochujang or harissa or tahini flavor profile. And then also importantly for the frozen category, if we look at the fastest growing type of formats at restaurants today, All of these items lend themselves very nicely to frozen as well. So things like street tacos or rice bowls or grain bowls, where frozen can be a solution for almost any ingredient there, like the carrier, the grain, or the fruit and vegetable product. All right, so as far as usage of frozen in food service, usage is positive, very optimistic picture here where operators tell us they're either using the same amount of frozen product that they were 2 years ago, or they're using more. So 26% of operators tell us they're using even more frozen items today than 2 years ago. That said, the #1 challenge of frozen foods, and we know that this isn't new necessarily, that we've been working on this for a while, but this limitation of freezer space. That's the #1 challenge to food service operators today. They tell us they just don't have the amount of freezer space to increase their usage of frozen food. That said, despite the freezer space limitation, operators today are purchasing a huge variety of frozen products. So we can see here, the most common frozen products are meats, potatoes, and vegetables. And that pink bar represents the on-site operators. The purple is restaurants. So across the board, on-site are purchasing more of almost every category. But also, happily, operators are not just purchasing like one frozen thing. On average, they're actually purchasing almost 7 different categories of frozen food, so a wide swath there, lots of opportunity. And then if we think about increasing that even further, we wanted to understand what are the influential resources that operators turn to for information about like available brands or new products of frozen foods available in the marketplace. And they told us overwhelmingly so that conversations with their DSRs or distributor sales representatives are like the single best way to communicate information about your frozen food portfolio. So making sure that you keep your distributor representatives well informed about your product line. And that's followed directly also by food shows. So food shows and DSRs provide that kind of human-to-human touch point where you can maybe at a food show sample your product and prove out that it has the same great taste and flavor and quality as a fresh product, for example. All right, shifting to needs and preparations of frozen foods. So similar to every study we do, thousands over the past several years, what we always hear is most important for any item is the flavor and the taste of it, and that holds true for frozen. That's the quality that operators find most important when they're purchasing frozen foods. And that's kind of rounded out by that year-round availability, the consistency, and also easy to store is important to operators with the frozen food category. Now, this chart is important because we took all of those attributes that are important to operators within frozen foods, and we plotted them and ranked by their level of importance. So the higher they are on this chart, the more important they are to operators, and also the level of satisfaction. So the further to the right the dots are means operators are satisfied with that attribute. So where we're winning today and what's in that upper right-hand quadrant and those green dots are areas like ease of preparation and year-round availability and consistency. So we're doing great there. Where we could maybe focus on for the immediate months and years ahead are those red dots. So that's value for the money, so proving out the value perception of frozen foods, and then also the labor savings of frozen options. So maybe that's especially true for like heat and eat frozen foods, but really, we hear, and I'll share this next slide too, that all of the concerns that operators might have on their plates today, labor cost is very key. That's like a central urgency topic. They're all concerned about that. The $15 minimum wage is certainly contributing to this. So managing labor costs is something that we need to focus on as the frozen food industry and proving out how we can help with that. And then also critical objectives for operators that frozen helps with is this notion of how we can help manage waste and how we can potentially help operators improve employee training, because maybe you don't need to know perhaps a certain knife cut or how to trim a certain piece of protein or fruit or vegetable with a frozen product. So we can help operators address these key objectives that are really on their mind today, perhaps keeping them up at night. All right, so packaging, we'll talk in our panel today. Almost half of operators told us that they have an issue with current packaging available in the frozen food space. So that could be that it's too bulky. We often heard the sizes were too big, or the options are just limited. So operators want help. They need more innovation and support within this whole notion of frozen packaging. And when we asked what's appealing to them, resealable bulk bags are key. So that's especially true for our on-site operators, our schools, and our healthcare operators. They want that resealable bulk product. But also what was widely appealing is packaging that can be somehow designed to help minimize food waste. And what we also heard is that oftentimes staff doesn't seal bags properly, so then they're left open and then they get icy and there's freezer burn. So thinking about how we can offer packaging solutions that are designed to help minimize food waste. We also heard that as far as heat methods for frozen products, restaurants are using ovens, fryers, and steamers. And we also see in the industry at large that, you know, consumers today, they love this notion of like home-cooked, scratch-cooked, human-prepared food. So we think if we're reheating a frozen product, maybe even in an oven or in a fryer, if we can leverage these prep methods or descriptors, that's something people today want when they go out to eat. And these are the top trending descriptors for items on restaurant menus: blistered or charred, so this notion of adding like a dark edge to your product, wood-fired, even certain glazes like maple glazes might be something that we want to consider with frozen options. All right, so I'm a bit over on time, but just some quick summaries. So right now we're doing a great job. We're delivering on items that operators see as important: quality, taste, and consistency, but we're seen as short on innovation, so we need to think about addressing that. We have challenges with storage and also with packaging, so thinking about solutions that address both of those. Labor is like the key stressor for operators today, and frozen is such a solution for improving on labor stressors for operators, so sharing out that message. And then lastly, thinking about the channels that food service operators are using to learn about new products, like our DSRs and our food trade shows, and how we can help spread our messages there. So I apologize, I'm about 2 minutes over, but now we're going to transition to the panel discussion with Michael and Melissa and Allison. So thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you so much. So let's get started. First of all, you guys are on the front lines of food service. Do you agree? Is there a growing opportunity for frozen in food service? Michael.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think there's multiple advantages. So when you think about some of what's said there, for sure there's labor savings, there's food safety, there's portion control, there's consistency for chains trying to do, you know, the same thing across all of their units. Frozen food makes a lot of sense for many operators. Now you've got the other end of it where, okay, I've got to have everything fresh and from scratch and all of that, but by and large, the vast majority of operators need speed of service, need consistency, and those are really going to be the overarching themes, I think.
Yeah, I think if you think about the food service industry, so it's, you know, roughly $495 billion industry, and it's grown about 2% in the last year. And you see the impacts for growth really coming from immigration and also Gen Z coming into that dining out period of their lives. You know, they're looking for quality ingredients, healthy ingredients, foods that they recognize, and frozen has the ability to deliver on that quality time and time again consistently for the operator.
You're right, they are looking for more. They're more adventurous too. We know that the millennial consumer is very adventurous, so I think that's an opportunity for us to explore in food service. My daughter is into frozen acai bowls.
Obviously.
Right?
Who isn't?
For $10 a bowl, too. Marie, did you have anything to add? I think you laid the groundwork well. One of the opportunities for growth that Marie mentioned was innovation. And I found that so interesting because in our Power of Frozen in retail research last year, it was clear that the core consumer appreciated the innovation that's happening at retail. And there's so much of it that's happened that's really transformed the retail aisle, especially in entrees and frozen veg. And I think we're on the cusp of seeing a lot of that same innovation in frozen fruit. Why is that innovation happening, as Marie suggested, in food service, but food service is just slow to recognize it? Or are there specific barriers to innovation in food service for our industry?
You know, one of the things I thought about that struck me from the report is that, you know, the frozen food industry is ubiquitous in food service. 89%, is that the number, of operators are using frozen. So I think to have a real game-changing innovation, you have to have a massive, massive change, you know, something that just comes out of nowhere. And I think probably as an industry, that's the place where we have an opportunity. You know, we're doing lots of little innovations, but have we had that big one that really like changes the game? I think that's a question mark for me about that might be why operators aren't seeing innovation holistically from the industry.
I wonder what that big thing is.
I don't know.
We got to find that big thing.
I'm taking that back to the office. I'll let you know.
Michael, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think if you look at innovation, packaging innovation starts in retail, flavor innovation starts in food service. So it's an ebb and flow. You've got to have the right hero ingredient and then have it available at scale for us to be able to innovate around. And you know, sriracha. Look at all of the, you know, their milestone events every couple of years when someone finds that unique ingredient on the shady side of a hill in Peru or something. You know, this is how we do it. So they don't come as fast, but when they happen, they do change the industry.
So it sounds like you guys are confident that if we can find the big thing and elaborate on it in our category, that we can convince the operators that the innovation is there.
I think the other thing about food service, right, is it's very channel specific. There's lots of pieces and parts to it, so there might be innovation happening in quick serve that you're not seeing in your independent operator. You know, the independent operator might be pushing some new ideas and creativity and versatility in foods that haven't quite come over the line to your big national accounts. So I think the pockets of innovation are happening. It's just that it's happening in pieces and parts kind of spread out through the industry.
The only thing I would add is we also know consumers today are looking for certain terms and qualifiers like organic and sustainable, and you know, if we look at like the fruit category, tropical fruits are trending and things like that. So if we have any of those inherent to our product line, we would be remiss not to mention them too.
Yeah, so Marie, since you mentioned sustainability, how you guys are, again, dealing with food service operators every day, how have you seen their interest in sustainability change over the last few years, and where do you see Frozen has an opportunity to help them achieve their goals?
Waste reduction. So major concern. You know, the non-com operators do the best job of this. So think of a college campus. They're extraordinary in reutilizing all of that, getting it either donated, using it for animal feed. They do an extraordinary job. Driving that waste reduction is really the first step for sustainability. And with Frozen, big advantage there, right? The more fresh ingredients I buy, the more I have to manage to food safety and those waste concerns. So I do think we bring a lot to the table there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we consider, again, that generational effect, I mean, today's consumer is all the more interested in health and wellness, clean foods, where their foods are coming from. You're going to see that conversation ever mounting. McCain has just announced a partnership at One Planet Business for biodiversity, which was announced at the UN back in September. And you know, we've really onboarded this idea of sustainable agriculture and what can we do to really make a difference in that space, because the more global warming and climate change impacts us, it impacts us all. All of us in this room will be impacted by it in some way, shape, or form. So I think sustainability, you can look at it from an operator standpoint, but I think you can also look at it from a supplier and from an industry standpoint, because it's going to become ever more important to this room overall.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And we heard that at our leadership conference. We had the global supply chain, global cold chain president at the time present to us what their industry is doing around energy reduction. And I think that's a good way for us as an industry. So it's not just packaging, right? That's huge for food waste, but it's telling the whole story of what your companies are doing around sustainability so that that's additive to your customers' story.
Sure, and I mean,
includes
you'll
our
see,
suppliers.
you know, big customers like Walmart's got a 1 gigaton challenge out there to reduce energy. McDonald's is looking for 31% reduction in efficiency in terms of a sustainability output. I mean, more and more our customers in the food service space are asking for what are we doing to become more sustainable as a product.
Right, right. Marie, anything to add on that?
I guess I would echo, you know, the climate change shifted to climate crisis. It's very much a discussion point. We hear that, Melissa, you mentioned Gen Z. They say that all other things equal, what will motivate them to choose one away from home establishment over another is if that restaurant expresses or shows concern or care for the environment in some way. So their sourcing methods, or do they have a recycling program or anything like that? That's what younger diners are looking for when they go out to eat.
Yeah. And you hit on food waste, Michael. I think, you know, it's that 1/3 of our food goes to waste in this country. You know, the ways that we can help, frozen can be that game changer when you think about how we can stop that tide of food waste.
Yeah, we have some great resources, by the way, on our website. So if you are looking to expand that story with your buyers, please go to our website. We've got stories that are very specific to frozen that you can adopt very easily to your marketing pitch. So let's talk about packaging a little bit. So we know that was a big area, kind of a big aha here in our research, is that operators want more from us in packaging. It seemed like it was a lot around resealable packaging. What are some of the innovations that you're seeing coming down the pike in frozen, or what are you hearing from operators?
We're looking at it more, again, from the sustainability perspective, so compostable packaging, cardboards, moving to poly because it's actually recyclable. Poly can also allow us to reduce the amount of packaging that we use in our products, you know, taking up less space, but also taking up less resource to make those packages. So we're looking at it more from a sustainability perspective as I think about innovations in that space.
Yeah, so I think resealable inner packs, portion control, what we can do to just the fundamentals of how can we make our shippers more effective for distributors even count. So pallet optimization. I mean, there's a number of layers that we can kind of rethink our business and make it a little bit more efficient and effective in that way. And I think you know, the challenge on the packaging side is how do you make a package that works for operators in general, right? You almost have to be, you know, very micro specific in who you're innovating for. So what works for a convenience operator does not work for a QSR operator, right? QSR needs high volume, big packs, everything in a 50-pounder if they can. The convenience store needs 3 packs and 6 packs and things that you know, can fit in a little tiny online freezer.
Right,
So,
that gets overwhelming quickly. It sounds like when we tested how many different types of food service operators here, maybe 10. So if you're looking for unique packaging for each one of that's a big cost for your areas in R&D.
The only thing I would add is in the report there are some interesting SKUs by kind of food service vertical and their preferences for packaging. What comes to me is the on-site operators are the ones who really expressed interest in the resealable bulk. And then the QSR operators looked for something maybe a little different, and full service restaurants had differences as well, but that notion of having packaging that can somehow minimize food waste was definitely universally appealing.
So an interesting characteristic of the food service industry for frozen is that so much of the sales or transactions are carried out through distributors and brokers. And I understand there are great efficiencies in that system. But are companies or industry or the association, are we doing enough to educate that layer of our business in the benefits of frozen so that they can effectively be our eyes and ears and help us in both innovation and telling the story about all the benefits around labor and food waste, et cetera? Are there some additional tools that we might need as an industry?
Yeah, I'm always a big proponent for surround sound when it comes to a message point such as training around the value of frozen food. So I think that's a responsibility of the supplier to be training our distributors and our brokers, but certainly, you know, when you look at AFFI and all of the industry elements in this room, I think you have to, everybody kind of be rowing in the same direction to get that message all the way through to the end user, which is, you know, your everyday broker sales rep sitting across the table from an operator. It's a long chain of conversations that have to happen.
That's right. It's like
to
a
get
telephone
you to-
game, right? When we're
exactly,
little.
to get you
Where
to a
does it end
best
up?
practice at that particular moment. So I think we all need to kind of row in that same direction to talk about, you know, why frozen food makes the most sense for today's operator.
So you asked if we're doing enough. I would say no, it's impossible to do enough in terms of educating distributors and especially DSRs. You know, when you think that that's not a career salesperson by and large, right? You know, could have been working at Best Buy a couple weeks ago. And so how do I get them educated on food, get them smarter on my product line, all of that? You know, what I would say is that whatever our training budgets are in this room, double them and focus on those distributors.
Yeah, maybe that's an opportunity for AFFI to step in and do some additional work or create a resource that can be used by all.
I think that's
you know,
great.
to create some
That
efficiencies.
would be great.
Marie, did you have anything to add on that?
I don't think I do on that one.
Okay. We heard from some of the operators that they don't use frozen because they prefer cooking from scratch, and that's probably more in the fine dining. Is there some work that we have to do to get chefs to understand how they can use frozen in scratch cooking? Because it's how I cook at home. I think it's how most consumers now cook. If we can take a couple of steps off of the whole process, that creates efficiency, and that ties back into our labor story. But how do we communicate that to chefs around, especially in this industry, in this audience with frozen produce? You know.
So I think there's two sides to it. It's the you know, the waste reduction, but two, in some cases, better quality from frozen than from fresh, and certainly sustained quality versus fresh, and then the availability year round, right? So there's certain things that you will get a better product if it's IQF versus fresh, and far more consistent. So I think educating that, getting that message out is pretty key.
Yeah.
So I was reading on the plane in Chicago Magazine, and they did this interview with chefs all around the city, and they were all anonymous comments. But one of the chefs had said, when I first started out, I made my bread, I made my sausage, I made this, I made that. And I just realized, the guy who makes sausage, he makes better sausage than me. And the guy who makes better bread. What we need to be educating chefs about is, you make what's on the plate, right? Let us bring you the great consistent food that can come from the frozen chain, and you put it together on the plate, and that is your creativity, and that's your stamp. You don't need to have to spend the time standing in the back room. Spare yourself the labor costs, which we heard very clearly is on their mind. Somebody standing in the back room trying to prep those vegetables for them.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone chopping an onion anymore.
Yeah.
Why would someone do that when there's frozen onion?
Well, and I think there's another bit in the research that comes out. 15% of the laborers are actually very skilled. That's kind of the number.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a big gap in terms of your labor, in terms of their skills. So if you want to serve a product consistently on the plate, why wouldn't you use frozen?
Completely agree. I think that's the story. That's part of our story to our distributors.
Yeah.
I think I would be remiss if I didn't address food safety in this audience. And what are some of the trends that you're seeing or you're being asked about with regards to food safety operators and frozen? And is there an opportunity for frozen to position ourselves to improve the food safety environment of your customers in food service?
Most definitely there is, and it just goes back to that, you know, when you've got those fresh ingredients and you've got added waste and you've got food safety concerns as a result of that issue. Frozen carries a story there. You know, what can we do to kind of deliver that food safety piece? It's almost working against operators' inherent desire to use everything. So RTE versus not RTE, frozen versus thawed. You know, we battle that quite a bit. You know, not so much with appetizers, of course, right? That's freezer to fryer, but so many other areas where I'm just trying to speed up my service. So I want to thaw it out.
Right.
And we've got to help educate that of, well, but speed of service is not the only concern. And how do you educate, you know, and then to do that at a chain level where, hey, they've got 1,500 units and all individually run, and everyone's accountable for a food cost number and a labor number and all of that.
So do you find yourselves in the position of having to continually educate your customers about how to use your product correctly?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I think it goes back to your question about just education overall. I mean, we just have to continually be on our forefront of training the person that is making the sale, so that the operator does know how to use the products correctly. And they need to understand what's at stake, right? It's their reputation as well.
Absolutely. We do have, just for the knowledge of the audience, AFFI developed, and it's on our website, it's a one-pager that was developed with the National Restaurant Association to communicate food safety practices of frozen foods in food service. So if you haven't seen that document, I encourage you to go to our website, affiefoodsafety.org, and download it. It's one page. It's very easy to slip in with any of your materials to your food service customers. With that, I think I'd be happy to open it up to the audience for any questions. We have some mics floating.
You all talked about education of the operators and distributors. How can the industry do a better job of educating the general public? Because a lot in the frozen world, there's a lot of misconception on this whole idea of frozen versus fresh. And obviously it helps if the operators understand when they're making dishes or making their preparations. But for the general public, what can the industry do?
Right, so I guess I'll take that one.
That's your job, Alice.
So we do have a lot of resources on how frozen foods can be used by the consumer as well. AFFI contributes to several campaigns already. We partner with a group called the Partnership for Food Safety Education, and that's a group of collaborators across the United States, food safety experts in government and in the private sector, who communicate food safety information, and we've been very diligent over the years about including frozen. And then we've got a lot of information on our website as well. I would say part of the responsibility there is also to our brand owners, and to make sure that we are promoting recipes that correctly incorporate frozen, and that we are not encouraging misuse of frozen through recipes. And if you see recipes on the internet that do misuse frozen, let us know. We will, as AFFI, we will communicate. We will reach out to reporters. We will reach out to different websites and correct what we see. You know, if someone's recommending, and this happened last year, we had a nutritionist recommend that I think it was frozen edamame or frozen peas be thawed and put in a kid's lunchbox as a healthy snack or after school. You know, well, we quickly communicated that was not an appropriate use, that this was a product that needed to be cooked first, and then it's perfectly appropriate for that snack and a great option. But following the cooking instructions is important. So I think that's an industry-wide opportunity. It's also, when I spoke about what our board is looking at right now, how do we communicate to vulnerable subpopulations the importance of following the cooking instructions? That is a top priority for AFFI this year. Other questions? Phones are starting to ring. Do you guys have anything to add? Any last comments on, from your perspectives, the future of frozen and food service?
No, I mean, I think as you look across, the preparation methods are changing a bit. You know, you've got the Turbo Chef. You've got a
Right.
bunch of different preparation methods.
air
that are-
fryer.
Air fryer. We have to think about how do we put those instructions correctly on our package. And, you know, it adds to the complexity then of making sure that the operator is then training their staff to use those things in the right
Right.
way. But again, it all goes back to just that surround sound messaging, you know, to keep our products safe.
How about you,
Yeah.
Michael?
So just keep educating and keep that message out there.
Excellent. Marie, you do so much research in food service with other industries as well. Any parting thoughts for frozen
Yeah,
as how we can advance this category?
Sure, and I think I speak on behalf of our whole team who worked on this research project that we think the future is bright. And we're such a great category already. It's rare to see that much usage. Almost everyone's using these products. So maybe the biggest opportunity is to help operators understand how we can help with labor stressors, because that's such a big deal in food service right now. But otherwise, applaud the great efforts that we've made, and that yeah, the future is very bright for the food service industry.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for being here this morning. I wish you a great day of meetings and productive meetings and lots of transactions over the course of today and tomorrow. Thanks for being here, and have a good rest of the event.